Hi there, this is Ira Weinstein with Recon Research. During today's webcast, we're discussing a key topic in the collaboration world, and that's video interop. I am tremendously honored to be joined by two thought leaders in the space. I'm going to let each of them introduce themselves and their companies. Let's start off with you, Ilya.
Sure. Thanks, Ira. My name is Ilya Bukshteyn. I'm the VP for Microsoft Teams calling and devices within the Microsoft Teams product group. Hopefully everyone is familiar with Microsoft Teams as the unified collaboration, communication, and productivity environment from Microsoft. For my area, I lead the investments that we make into helping people use Teams for calling, and then helping get purpose-built devices for meeting rooms, desk phones, peripherals, every other kind of device category out there working with Teams.
Perfect. Thank you, Ilya. Jeff, we'll jump over to you.
Hi, Ira. Glad to be here. I'm Jeff Smith. I lead product for Zoom Rooms, Workspace, and Whiteboard at Zoom. So it's beyond the conference room, looking at the entirety of the workspace for companies, whether that's kiosks in the reception area or digital signage into the conference room and the experience there. And also digital whiteboarding and how that platform can help hybrid work. So a lot going on, and we're having fun every day.
Perfect, Jeff. Thank you. So I also want to mention that today's webcast is actually being hosted on two different platforms. We're starting off on Microsoft Teams. That's where we are now. And in a few minutes, we're going to pause a little and then switch over to Zoom meetings. So with that, let's jump in. So what I'm going to do is start off the session with a really quick primer on what is video interop. Not everybody knows what that means. So basically, video interop allows different video systems and meeting platforms to communicate with each other. Now, back in the day, video systems and platforms all spoke the same language. We called them standards. And all of those systems and platforms that spoke standards, they used to interoperate. But today, things are a bit different. Many vendors and platform providers have shifted away from those legacy standards to gain access to new features and workflows. But this has created a new generation of interop challenges. For example, Microsoft Teams and Zoom Meetings are two leading video platforms. Both of these platforms support literally hundreds of millions of users, but they don't directly interoperate. Imagine that. Now, the same thing goes for their meeting room solutions. Zoom Rooms and Microsoft Teams Rooms do not directly interoperate. Now, for users, people at their desks and laptops, they can avoid these issues by loading and switching to different apps on their PC or their phone. Great for users. But in a meeting room, switching apps is not as easy. So that's a challenge. Now, this may sound bad, but don't worry. These two companies are working together to make things happen. And today we're going to dig in a bit on a relatively new approach called direct guest join. So with that, let's start here. My first question, either one of you can jump in. What is direct guest join?
Ilya, go ahead, take it first.
Sure, sounds good. Thanks, Jeff.
Yeah.
So direct guest join is an initiative where us, some other companies, said we should be able to solve exactly the problem you talked about, Ira, which is in a meeting room when customers have effectively an appliance, a dedicated room system that has a native web application, Zoom Rooms for Zoom, Teams Rooms for Teams. But if someone comes in with a non-native meeting, we still want them to be able to use the great audio, video, that great room system to join that, to do that occasional non-native join. And as you said, there are multiple approaches in the industry. In the past, there were approaches that had to do with standards like SIP and H.323, but those were really designed in the on-prem server era. And they're very much about basic audio, video, and video-based screen sharing. And if you want to do anything more modern, if you want to have reactions and more advanced sharing, new capabilities, you're pretty limited by those protocols. So all of us support some sort of interop via gateway to those standard protocols, but we thought we could do better. And in discussing technology between us, we actually said, look, these modern room systems are all built with new technologies, including browser controls. All of our modern meeting services have a browser-based experience that doesn't require an app to be maintained and downloaded and updated. Why don't we see if we can leverage that? So at its simplest, direct guest join is this concept. If you walk into a room with a native room system, you want to join a non-native meeting, the room system is going to be smart enough to open up a browser control, not a full browser, a control, and show a room optimized experience in that browser control, web-based, for the non-native meeting. So you can go ahead and join a Zoom meeting on a Teams room. You can go ahead and join a Teams meeting on a Zoom room.
Got it. So I've got let's call it the standard app we use, but I need to join a meeting on another platform. And this is a built-in way of doing just that. Now, Jeff, question here. In the industry, there's been a lot of talk about BYOD, bring your own device. Now, BYOD lets people run pretty much any collaboration app they want. So why did Zoom and Microsoft and some others get together to create Direct Guest Join?
So there's a couple of different things. One is looking at this new era of standards, and this is a modern approach to standards. So leveraging WebRTC, it's a more expansive view of what the standards include, compared to the H323 and SIP standards of old. So we have a lot more flexibility in what we can do, and we can leverage a lot of existing technologies that we've developed over time. Looking at the use cases for using conference rooms, a BYOD approach is interesting, but it puts a lot of burden on the end user. So when I walk into a conference room, what device do I have at my disposal that I'm bringing to the table? If I want to walk into a room and just join the meeting, I can't do that if I have to plug in my device, launch the meeting on my device, make sure that it recognizes the peripherals that are there. I might not be super tech savvy, and so the whole idea of BYOD just shifts the burden from the platform provider to the end user, and that's not what we're about with the conference room experience. I want to walk in, push a button, join a meeting.
Love it. So there's a couple things, right? So first of all, Direct Guest Join, it gives you, let's say, the flexibility to add in more functions over time. Loving that. It's an open-ish framework that you can build on over time. And I agree, BYOD is flexible, but it gives you a user experience, not a room experience, and it requires cabling and apps to run, and my laptop's not available for the meeting, things like that. Now, going back to Direct Guest Join, how easy is it to enable Direct Guest Join on the platform? Do I have costs? Do I need to sign up for other things or install anything? How does that work?
I think that's another one of the advantages of this approach is that there's no additional cost or setup associated with Direct Guest Join. You're not downloading additional software applications that have to be built and maintained by a competing platform. And so when you're leveraging this technology, it's very seamless to add this to an existing room system. So we've built that foundation. The apps get the latest version every time it launches. So we don't have to worry about all of the things about software updates and management of somebody else's application. Yeah.
So somebody in admin land enables this on your account.
Just a feature.
It's a feature.
Yeah.
It's like any other feature. Go ahead, Ilya.
And I will argue, I'll make an argument that the IT folks watching this maybe can use. Direct Guest Join saves you money. How does it save you money? Well, aside from the sort of obvious, you don't have to pay for an interop service, I'm going to go back to that cable point that Jeff made so well. We believe in this a lot. Cables. At Microsoft in our rooms, we're hiding cables. Our approach to cables is break glass in case of emergency, right? They're there, but we're going to have them well put away. Why? Well, our IT group called Microsoft Digital did some studies on what does it mean to have cables. Turns out that anywhere where you have a cable being plugged and unplugged, on average, that breaks one laptop a year or more. And that cost of that laptop actually pays for a full room system in the room. And so any feature that Jeff and I can do that helps you, the IT customer, not have to have cables in the room, we think is directly not just paying for the cost of that room system, but overall saving the company money.
I love it. And I also have to say, when there's a cable on the table, you can't help but play with it, maybe disconnect it, see where it goes. It's a temptation to damage the system for the next meeting. I would never do that, but I've seen people do it. How's that? Now let's go into the user side. We talked about admins enabling it, or that it's a feature, but what's the user experience? Do they change anything they're doing, or do they just walk in and dial? What does that look like?
Well, I could start. Our goal is to have the least different user experience, really build that muscle memory. So today, you forward that meeting invite to the room. It shows up. There's a join button. The join button actually has the logo of the service you're joining. So if it's a Zoom meeting, you're going to see a Zoom meeting, Zoom logo. You hit join. The experience pops up on the front of room. It's a room optimized web app experience, as Jeff said. Now, we know that there's a lot of folks that, especially Zoom users, but others as well, who want to join by typing in a meeting ID, not having a scheduled meeting. That's coming as well. We're working jointly between Zoom and ourselves and others to enable that for direct guest join. So once that's there, I would say it's just like joining the native meeting in the room system. It's meant to be, to go back to, again, differentiating BYOD. My goal, I think Jeff's as well, when we started rooms, was meetings start in seconds instead of minutes. And it's easier to start a meeting than it is to make a phone call on what used to be standard in every room, which was a phone. That same goal applies with direct guest join.
So in the MTR world, I walk in as long as it's scheduled and I click the join button. Is it the same thing in the Zoom world, Jeff?
Yeah, absolutely. And so our objectives are the same, to have that very, very similar, especially on the join flow, to have a very, very similar experience, platform to platform to platform. In meeting as well, we have a scaled down UI because the feature set isn't as rich when you're in an interop situation than when you're in the native client. But it's a familiar UI from a controller perspective. So and as Ilya said, we're enhancing that experience so that we can move from just supporting scheduled meetings to also supporting join by passcode to supporting additional features as we move through our roadmap. So the objective is to have it be as familiar to the users of that system as possible.
So concept-wise, the meeting is scheduled. I walk in the room, I push the join button. I really don't know whether I'm using direct guest join or not. I'm just joining the meeting. That's the concept and that's the workflow. Love it. All right, gentlemen, we're jumping right back in. Now we are on the Zoom platform, and let's continue with our discussion about Interop and direct guest join. So we talked about how easy it is to enable it, how the user workflow doesn't change. Now let's talk about the actual meeting experience. And by this, I mean, are the users sacrificing video or audio quality in order to interoperate in this way? Who wants to jump in on that?
I'll take a stab at it to start. There's a couple of different things from a user experience perspective in meeting. And yes, there are things that we can't do when we leverage standards to communicate. And so because there are some optimizations that we're not able to do, there is a degradation in video quality and audio quality to some extent as well. There are some features in meeting that we're not able to use on web technologies versus the native client that's in room. So we do know that there's some lower level of experience than you would get from the native application. And from our perspective, as we approach this, we look at the overall user experience, and not just the end user experience, but also the IT user experience. So what do you gain by using this approach that offsets the cost of those things. And you gain that solution support, the reliability of the platform, the manageability of software, as well as the out of meeting features that you expect from the room system. So it's a trade-off. There always is, and there's no perfect solution. And so these are the problems that we've chosen because they're less impactful to the overall user experience, both the end user and IT.
So Ilya, would you agree with that there's a bit of a, let's call it a video audio tax here, that it goes from amazing to very good, or is it more significant than that? How would you categorize that?
I would agree that the native experience is always going to be superior, because each vendor can do things in the app to optimize for that hardware setup and have it be super well tested via certification, et cetera. But I will say that in my view, direct guest join is interop unbound or unshackled. What do I mean by that? Well, without having to have a gateway in the middle that is sort of that limiting factor, each vendor is sort of free to think about, what do we do for our experience in the web? And that's true even outside of rooms. Each vendor sort of decides, what do we do in our browser-based experience as the reach client, and what do we do in the native experience as the rich client? And maybe we want to have them be as close as possible to each other. Maybe there's some gap. That just carries forward into rooms. With a few limitations that I know we'll talk about in a bit, that are introduced by specifically running on a browser control on a room system. But in terms of the sort of core in-meeting experience, yeah, look, if we want to figure out a way to bring in reactions, for example, in meetings, that's up to us. That's work that we can do in the Teams web client, and same for Zoom. So I think over time, each vendor will kind of make decisions about what makes sense for this experience. And they're not going to be bound by any sort of gateway or legacy protocol in the middle.
Yeah, I have to say, a couple of months ago, we tested 50, that's 50 different interop combinations and scenarios. Our conclusion was exactly yours, which is native is always preferred, but real world requires interoperability. And yes, there is often a little bit of a hit, but the meeting still goes on and the quality is still leaps and bounds ahead of what the typical user expects. So let's now talk about what's in the field today. Right now in the field, we have customers using Windows and Android meeting room apps. I mean, there are all sorts of devices out there. So now this question would be, is direct guest join supported equally on both Windows and Android, or do I have a challenge with one or the other at this point?
The answer is yes.
The answer is yes. Finally, we can say that the answer is across the operating systems that we support, we can support direct guest join in every one of those devices that we support and certify. So this has been a lot of work on both sides for our teams, and we're very happy to say that we can support it on all those platforms.
There's a small asterisk on our side, which is on Android, the images, the device image, if you will, is a combination of work from the OEM and us. And so some of our newer OEMs, like Neat, for example, still working to finalize the right firmware browser control combination, but it's coming very soon. So with that asterisk, I'd say the goal is, yes, every Teams room, every Zoom room will have this capability.
Good. It's funny. Just as you said it, I was about to say, so we can get rid of some of those asterisks that make it 10 minutes, 10 minutes to read.
We just minimize the asterisk. Now
that's right,
really
the little 8-point
asterisk.
So you guys just brought up Neat, right? So let's genericize that a little. When we talk about meeting room video conferencing devices, and I'm not focusing on one or the other, Crestron, Logitech, Neat, Poly, Yealink, it doesn't really matter which one. Does direct guest join support vary by device, by vendor, by configuration? Is any of that still asterisked, for lack of a better term?
So it doesn't actually, and this has to go with the way that we've certified devices. So part of that certification is a base level of support for the underlying browser platform that has to be in the operating system in order for the firmware built in order for this to function. So all of those certified devices have to be on a particular version of Chromium and things like that. So that's how we've both managed that.
Yep,
So
that's totally correct moving forward. Yep.
So part of the beauty here is since the app is typically from the provider, Zoom or from Microsoft, right? It doesn't really matter what device is providing it to you. It's the same basic app, plus or minus. Love that. It just simplifies a lot of things. So far we've talked about the power and the capabilities and the flexibility of Direct Guest Join, but we sort of tickled a couple of things about what's not perfect. So my question now is, what's not quite there yet with Direct Guest Join, and what's coming? You know, should I worry and not touch it, or is it ready to play and new things are coming? Who wants to start out?
I can start. I'll take the bad news. I think the main thing I would want customers to know is we're very well aware jointly of the things customers have asked for. So I want to give everybody the confidence to know that we're not in an ivory tower. Specifically, we know we need to add join by ID or join by code. That is work happening right now. Also, in this scenario, the guest part of Direct Guest Join means that these devices are doing an anonymous join. It's a guest join. So you don't have to have a Zoom account for that room to be able to join a Zoom meeting, for example. What comes with that is guest policies apply. And so the device may end up going into the lobby. And so we're also working to figure out ways to do sort of a lobby bypass with the right policies in place. That's key. Also, in sort of our V1 implementation, we did not support the local HDMI ingest. Now, my comments about cables still stand. I think there are better ways to share content than plugging in a cable. But for those that do want to just plug in an HDMI cable, share a laptop screen, we're also working on that. Last but not least,
and the great one about that one is that we're able, when we're able to do that we can support a wireless share between the laptop and the room device. Then the room device joins into the Teams meeting. So we can do wireless local sharing. Once we're able to do that. So high priority for us.
Good point. Good point.
That end user experience that's familiar to them can be supported across the board.
Very good point. I was going to say, last but not least, dual screen rooms. Right now, Direct Guest Join is limited to a single screen in those dual screen rooms. And the very simple answer as to why is there is no web meeting experience in the world that I know of that can have two windows with a coordinated experience. So we're breaking new ground here. This is one that I can't say we're working on and we're going to deliver, but I can say we're jointly investigating it. We have developers each doing investigations, trying to think about how to do this. We've got a couple of approaches that I think are interesting. So something we are actively looking at trying to solve here for this
Excited
scenario.
about that one. It's invention.
Yes,
and I
yes.
love doing work where there's invention involved. It's a challenge. It's not deterministic when you can deliver, as you said, but we're after it, trying to figure out how to do it.
I have to say, among our enterprise clients, that's a primary reason why some might not want to go this route. They want the dual screen experience that they're used to, but good, you're working on it. We have a lot of brain power behind figuring out an approach to doing this at some point. Love that. Now, I got a challenging one here. Typically, interop in a meeting room means that users see what I guess I'd call their standard collaboration app, the one they're used to when they join the meeting, even though they're on another platform. So they keep their standard UI in front of them, but they're joining another platform. So in the MTR world, people would see the Teams UI. In the Zoom Rooms world, the local room would see the Zoom UI. My question is, will there be a time when those meeting room users can simply switch apps on the fly and join meetings on other platforms? So it's the ad hoc native experience in the room. So
we talked a little bit about some of the, yeah, absolutely. And we talked a little bit about some of the problems that are associated with that approach and how the conference room environment is different than a consumer device environment. And this is a pick your problem, type of approach. And we've talked about how in the direct guest join approach, there's some degradation of experience and limited feature set. And so, and we talked about what we gain by doing that trade-off. If we go with a multi-app approach, the problems that we've chosen are pretty substantial, especially burden on the IT environment. So that single point of support, when we talked about using browser technology, that was something where I don't have to worry about the latest version of the Teams client. Now, if I go into that multi-app approach, all of a sudden, whoever is the primary application provider for that device has to worry about the latest version of everybody else's app. So that becomes an app store manager. How many app stores are you going to have? And who do you call when there's a failure in one of those applications? And how much opportunity for finger pointing is there if the Zoom application has an issue on that device, or the Teams application has an issue on that device? Are we going to blame each other? Are we going to blame Polly? Are we going to blame Neat? What's going to go on? And then looking at that, the feature set. If I'm in a multi-app environment, all of the out-of-meeting features associated with that device are now completely useless. So unless there's a foreground application that's there when a user walks into the room, they can't use any of those features. We have native room controls. We've got direct share for local sharing when you're outside of a meeting, whiteboarding. So there's all sorts of functions that are available outside of the meeting environment. And if you put that application in the background, waiting for the meeting to join, all those features go away. So it's a pick your problem type of challenge. And so from our perspective, the best overall customer experience is one where the primary application controls the experience, is that single point of contact, and we move forward with that.
Ilya, I have a feeling you may have something to say on this too. Giving you a chance.
Yeah, I get this question all the time, as you know, and had some high-profile Twitter exchanges. I like to say that the multi-app approach is a lot like a puppy. Looks cute, looks alluring, but you're probably going to end up cleaning some poop, and a lot of it. And in this case, the poop is the IT experience, exactly as Jeff said. This is very much a difference between a managed device and an unmanaged device. On an unmanaged device, like my TV at home, if the Netflix app glitches, as it did for me last night, well, you kill the app, you uninstall the app, you reinstall the app. That's it. Like, those are sort of your options, and you kind of figure out a way to move on. In a managed environment, everything that happens in that room is IT's problem. And you very quickly get into a really ballooning matrix of what does IT have to look at? How many management portals does that IT person have to go into for a room that has a Teams app and a Zoom app and a WebEx app and a GoTo app and a BlueJeans app and a Google app? How many portals are trying to set settings and monitor and update and secure? And if there is a security issue that needs an update, how many places do you have to go to make sure that update is applied? So I think it very quickly is an IT nightmare, in addition to the user experience problems that Jeff said of anything that is out of meeting is broken. And so, if someone before me was using Zoom and the room is in Zoom mode, and I walk in and I am running late and I got to get that room into a Teams meeting, and I want to use proximity join just like I do in every other room, well, that's broken. So let me go ahead and go to the app switcher and find Teams and wait for that to come up and make a network connection. That's, in my experience from customers I talk to, that is not the experience they're looking for. So I'm very proud of the work we've done together here to address both interop, but also the poop issues that we just.
Yeah, it sounds magical on the surface, and then you get into it and you're like, oh, that's a different set of problems that I didn't easily recognize from the outset.
So summarize it. And by the way, we have clients who ask for that. The industry is asking for it. I think the summary, what I'm hearing here is The request makes sense, the concept makes sense, the reality is challenging from a technology standpoint, a feature set, a manageability, even a user experience. So right now, that's not something that's planned, but the request is understood, and we're working toward that native feel through the.
Yeah, I can tell you how many times I hear that request.
And
yeah,
I've heard it several times.
I go through all of it, and it's like, oh, I didn't know that those are the problems that would be associated with that solution.
And I would add, give Direct Guest Join a try, because every time I hear the request
Right.
and I say, have you tried Direct Guest Join? Oh, no, what is it? How does it work? And once I've tried it, with the exception of the things we said are coming, I would say every customer I've talked to said, well, this works. This seems better.
Well, and that's the burden on us, right? Right, Ilya? Is the burden on us is to continue to improve the experience, address some of those issues that are blocking some customers from using it, and take that other discussion off the table.
Well, we're to be clear, we're counting on providers like Teams and like Microsoft and Zoom to protect us from mistakes and to provide us capabilities. So you've got a burden on both sides. So for the record, that's not the approach that your companies are working on now, but the request for a better meeting-to-meeting experience between platforms is understood, and we're working on it.
That's the core request.
Not unreasonable. So last question I have, right? And we talked a lot, obviously, about, Zoom to Microsoft, Microsoft to Zoom. We threw in a little BYOD in there. Let's talk about some of the other platforms, right? Does Direct Guest Join also let users connect from your rooms to other platforms? And I'm thinking WebEx, I'm thinking Google Meet. What's the play there, please?
So today we just support Microsoft, and in future we will support other platforms. But today we just support Microsoft with this approach.
From our side, everyone is in except Google. Of the folks you mentioned. So we support WebEx, we support WebEx today. GoTo and BlueJeans are coming, they're being worked on. And if anyone out there from Google's listening, call me. I'd love to chat. I can't seem to get an answer from the big G.
Right,
So,
and we support those other platforms with our conference room connector service. So we use different technologies, different approaches, depending on the provider, on the destination.
We should remind everybody of that, right? Direct Guest Join, we focus on that a lot here, but it's not the only way of getting to other platforms. But realistically, Direct Guest Join is a party that people are invited to attend. And when those other providers join the party, they'll be able to join it. Is that fair?
Right. We have a whole interoperability service that we've been running for a long time. We connect into WebEx and GoTo and BlueJeans and all of those that have supported SIP standards with a gateway. So we connect into all of those.
Perfect. So we're just about to close out here. Ilya, why don't you give us one last minute on your thoughts about Interop, Direct Guest Join, other approaches, and what companies that are dealing with this and making decisions should consider?
Well, I'd say, first of all, repeating what you said, Ira, Interop is a real need. It's a clear need. We hear from customers that the majority do select a primary meeting service, but absolutely want to have the same easy, quick, simple join in meeting rooms for the occasional non-primary or non-native meeting invite. So we hear that. I am very proud of the work that we've done together in partnership, along with some others, to try to address that need in a modern way. So while we both have gateway interop services, either direct or from partners that can use SIP and HR 323, I think what we're doing here is trying to say, using more modern technologies, using WebRTC, can we provide interop with a richer feature set, less limited, still a simple room experience, and in a way that leverages the modern room systems better? And that's what Direct Guest Join is. So I would ask for customers, give Direct Guest Join a try, get us your feedback. We need to know what we need to make better. We're actively working on it, but I fundamentally believe this is a great path forward for Interop.
Perfect. Jeff, why don't you give us your thoughts?
Yeah, my perspective is very similar. This is a very, very promising technology that has a long runway of improvement to the user experience. And we're focused on it, we prioritize it. We feel that this is the way that we can provide a great interoperable experience without sacrificing the IT and administrative experience, so that we can provide a reliable conference room device and environment, not sacrificing all of the feature set that we have outside of the meeting, and still provide a great experience in the conference room. Now we know there's work to be done. There's no feeling, I think, on either side that we're finished, mission accomplished. This is an ongoing effort that we're both invested in pretty heavily.
Perfect. Gentlemen, this has been a great session. I have to say, you answered on the record and on the recording, right? Some questions that I'm asked probably every single day by large enterprises. What's happening, what's possible, what's coming, and what mindset should I have toward video interop? So I thank you both for your time. This has been great. And I wish everyone here a wonderful day.
Thanks, Ira.
Thank you.
Pleasure, Ilya.
Thanks, Jeff.